Hello, uh, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I've been listening to some of the conference today, and there's been some amazing topic discussed. So thank you again for this opportunity. Today, I'm going to talk about something that is very dear to us at Fora, which is work and workplaces. And a lot has been written about it. Certainly, the pandemic has put a big lens on work and workplaces. And how do we return to work post the pandemic? My thoughts are based on experience. We've been designing, operating, running workplaces for a number of years now. So I'm going to give you some insights about what we see. But more importantly, I'm going to tell you that nobody has an answer that is 100% correct. Therefore, I'm gonna share with you a framework to think about the issues rather than give you an answer. Um, this is unfortunately is not my first crisis. I was in banking right in the middle of the financial crisis, and one thing I've learned at that time is that when you are in the peak of the crisis, trying to predict what the future looks like, it's always very, very dangerous. And usually the prediction are not accurate. And in general, I think we have learned now through history that trying to predict the future by looking back 6 months back and extrapolate is probably not the right way to think about it. So for all the doom and gloom around what people write about the office and the office and what's going to happen to the office, a lot of people, the great majority of people, think that they want to come back to an office. But it is also true that we need to come back to an office that is fit for purpose, that people really enjoy, and a space that where they can get engaged and obtain the maximum out of it. It is a place where people need to be convinced and pulled in right now, but in general, a place where the people want to enjoy. I always joke about how people rather work at Starbucks rather than work in their own office. And I gotta say that it talks not highly about Starbucks, but it talks very poorly about the office. And so the centerpiece of my discussion is always that the office needs to be fit for purpose. People miss the one thing about not working in the office is working together, build social relationship, and build ultimate trust. Trust is the currency of innovation, but I will argue trust is really the currency of everything we do in the workplace. Because we all work with each other, we all work in teams, and we all dependent on others delivering a certain piece of information or what you have, or a document, whatever you need. You need to trust that people can deliver that on time. During the pandemic, we've been using this currency, this trust currency that we've built by being in an office together for many, many years. And obviously, we continue to use that currency, and many of us are lucky. But imagine for newcomers to the office environment today, they're sitting at home where they don't have enough of this currency. So fundamentally, we need to go back, and we need a place where we can continue to spend time together and work and build that trust. The COVID obviously struck us, and I would argue that during the lockdown, it was somewhat easy to work remotely because we were all a bit in survival mode. And in survival mode means we were all worried about protecting the revenue and think about our cost structure. And I would argue that we can do that remotely. We can do that by being at home. However, think about growth. Think about the pivotal moment where you're back into a growth place, you're pivoting the business to a new era. And how do you do that remotely? I certainly, my personal experience over the past few months of trying to design a workplace and think about how people interact by using a Zoom has been extremely, extremely frustrating. Therefore, I think the actual workplace will be more important than ever as we go forward. So really go to the next slide. We think that COVID is accelerating a number of trends that were already there. And in general, I gotta say, over the past 10 years, I think the London workplace scene has improved dramatically. It has been better offices coming out, better workplaces, especially led by the tech community, but in general, there's been improvement of the work experience. And I'm excited because I think that this trend will continue. However, as I said, the more we stay away from each other, the more the connectivity we've built will start disappearing. And so I am worried about how long we're going to be stuck at home. And I am worried that the longer this happens, the harder or the more we will crave to come together to a much better environment. Collaboration, as the previous speaker was talking about, and creativity are down. We are used to do this in an environment that we share together. So as you can see from the data on this slide, it's a pretty dramatic picture of how much collaboration and creativity have suffered to the pandemic. At the end, people miss people. And that is what a lot of surveys say. They say that they see the office as a place where they spend time with a colleague, they build the trust that I was talking about earlier, the social bond. So it is about people. We've been saying this for years at Fora, that it is the office needs to put the people at the center of it and really build around these people. And we can see through the COVID crisis that the people, again, are the critical focal point of what we need to do. This is an example. This picture here is the Liberty Bell, for those of you. It's an augmented reality 3D that you can see through, also obviously an AR set. It's been quite an amazing project. I'll ask you to Google it and look for it. But it's an example of really, really clearly thinking, where you're trying to impose a 3D image on a real scene. And this kind of things is just one example of how we think that creativity needs people to be together to really crack it. And the real issue is not really when we were in lockdown and everybody was at home, but the real issue is when you have some people at home and some people in the office. And my real worry is that there will be a two-tier system where the people at home become second-class citizens to the people in the office. And that's not what we should do. We should really embrace the fact that working from home, working from a different location that is not the office, is part of the future. And therefore, we need to think about space, workplace, and technology that make sure that everybody is treated equally and everybody has a good day and an engaging day at work, no matter where they are. At the end, the workplace is the center of community, connectivity, and meaningful human interaction. If we don't achieve this, the office will be at risk. I do think that the office in general as a sector is going to go through the disruption similar to what we've seen in retail in the last 10 years. But even in retails over the last 10 years, there have been some concepts that have been very successful and others that have not. So the real danger is people will sit there thinking that the office in the future is going to look exactly like the one in the past, and therefore some offices will just not be fit for purpose. The result in general is the old way of looking at the office, which is number of people times number of square feet or number of people time desks. It's just an old way to think about it. And I think that equation is going to change quite dramatically as we think about the future. We have been designing for a while what we think are very engaging, interesting workplaces. And I can tell you that there's no single answer. It all depends on what company, what's the company, what's the purpose of the office for them, who works in that company, and what kind of work they do. And in general, you got to aim to get 80% right and 20% maybe they're not so right, and really work through, embrace experimentation, embrace test and learn, so you can continue to improve the experience you give to the people who use their office. This, for me, is a great example. These are old offices that now we look at and we're like, wow, who ever worked there? Well, these have been around for decades and decades, and we have worked through those. And as I said, that is an old way, but unfortunately, there are a lot of people still work in very similar places. This is way more modern, and this is, I'm proud to say, these are some Fora spaces, and this is the way we've been operating and managing spaces. But again, I think this is part of this evolution that we're going to continue to have, and therefore it is continue to think about what are the needs of people coming to the office and how you can meet those needs. And we have a very simple formula for this, where at the end, we put the person, the people, and wellness of these people at the center of it. And then we think about different spaces where there are attractive destinations that people want to use and very productive, engaging work environments. Therefore, as I said earlier, this equation, the desk and times people equation is done. And it's really about thinking about all these areas of workplaces and how somebody works during the day, and therefore creating an environment, physical environment, where there is variety and where they can use different spaces depending on the activities they want to do. This is the old way of having just desk in meeting rooms. And we fundamentally think we needed to move away before. And now more than ever with COVID, we need to really cancel this and think about the future. And the future looks more like this, which is basically focus areas, meeting areas, aggregation, collaboration areas, some desks, obviously, but these are more in neighborhoods where people need to come together to do a particular task or a particular type of work. This is an example of how you apply that. I'm sure this is a bit of blurry slide, but as you can see, it's got different zones and different areas. And actually, this is my business headquarters, where we run different areas and we experiment in different settings to really make sure that we understand how people use space. I will make one last point, which is very important. I think you need to do this by following this rule. You need to have an ecological, sustainable, social equity, inclusion, and quality of work life. These elements are critical, I think, to not only to build a great workplace, but in general to have a proper business. And the last point is we should do this by using our insight and our knowledge to make sure that we have an evidence-based workplace where people are really enjoying it and you get a feedback loop where you continue to improve the product as people utilize it. That's it for me. I think I've run out of my time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much for that, Enrico. That was really, really fascinating. We've just got time for one question. This is something we touched on earlier in the day. I'd be really interested to know what your strategies are for kind of encouraging social distancing, but still maintaining that kind of collaborative, interactive world of, the reason that people go into the workplace. How do you do that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. We have when we reopen our spaces post-lockdown, we have introduced a huge variety of changes to it, which we call the new standard. And the reason why we call it the new standard is we think it's here to stay. So the whole things that COVID has created in terms of hygiene levels and then how we social distance and how we respect each other's spaces, we think we're here to stay. And they're good things. And so it's a way for us to improve our spaces to encourage people back, but always in a very, very safe environment.
Great. Thank you so much, Enrico. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for the time.